It was brief and Admiral Shannon. I just distinctly remember the brief wasn't going well. His knees bouncing up and down, maybe a little of this. Hopefully this goes a little bit better today, sir. All right, so Captain Craig Dorrans, I'm the program manager for Naval Aviation Training Systems, and about a decade ago we collapsed PMA 248, which is training ranges, also into PMA 205. So what I'm going to talk about today is not only modeling and simulation from a training perspective, which is different from modeling and sim from a test perspective, but also the road to what we call live virtual constructive training. Y'all probably heard about LVC. I'll touch it just a little bit as we get to the end. But really, once you start talking about simulation and virtual environment, you really are bringing in live and constructive as well. See if I can figure this out. Which way do I do this? Okay. Great brief by Kevin on NavAir and how NavAir works. So I'm a PMA as well. Actually, I don't live underneath any of the PEOs. I live underneath the Air 10, where all the commodity PMAs work and live. And we actually report and have teams that are embedded in each and every one of the platform PMAs, working training systems for me, but you also have avionics and you also have aircrew systems. So actually, I don't report up to any PEO. I report up directly through Air 10, and then Vice Admiral Grosslegs is my boss. So a little bit different system the way it works for training systems, but we are responsible for the cost schedule performance of the acquisition and actually the sustainment of all of your training systems. So we're talking your full motion sims, we're talking your part test sims, we're talking your CBT and curriculums, we're talking maintenance sims, and then also for all the support and everything you use on range, EW threats, EW systems, range systems, we've got all that within PMA 205. We're organized into those different departments there, so a lot of the helicopter work falls into our maritime department, but also Marine Corps has got a large helicopter presence as well. And then we manage all those different things down there. 819 training devices worldwide is kind of what we're talking about. Okay, so before I can get into the future of modeling and sim, it's probably helpful to talk about where we've been. So back pre-1998, those of you who are 05s, 06s, or retired probably remember the simulators of yesterday. Pretty much used for procedures training and maybe FRS, and that was about it. Really didn't use them for tactical training, really didn't use them for any type of TNR. It was just simply procedures is what you got on the sims. You got in the airplane, that's how you learned how to train. Then back in 1998-2000, the Air Boss got the good idea that, hey, we need to start using our simulators more. We created what was called the FAST program, the FAST plan, the Fleet Aviation Simulator Training Plan. And we tried to bring up the level of fidelity of the simulators, bring them up to a level we could start doing some basic TNR work in our simulators. So we started the FAST plan, we made some improvements in simulators, and frankly, it was a pretty abject failure. But the fidelity we delivered was not that much of an improvement over what we had pre-1998. But the OpNav folks who controlled the flight hour budget heard that, hey, we can now do TNR in our simulators and started pulling flight hours out. So it kind of sent us into a panic in the early 2000s, and we said, hey, something's got to change. The FAST program didn't work. We're losing flight hours out of the squadrons because we're supposed to be able to do training in simulators. And the simulators that we're delivering just aren't of the capability where you can do that type of training. So we sat down and created what was now called the Naval Aviation Simulator Master Plan. Air Boss put out a policy in 2006 of nascent on what the fidelity requirements had to be to guarantee that we had to deliver to a certain level before any more flight hours could be taken out of squadrons. And that's the program we're executing to now. So over the next 3 to 4 years, we did a gap analysis of where the simulators were today and where they needed to be before we could start talking about moving training and readiness, ACTC, or even ARP into the simulators. We finally started with the NASIM Policy 2 in 2011, and that set our capability requirements and our acquisition strategy. And principally, NASIP applies to the H60 platform and also to the F-18 platform. So those are two existing sets of simulators that at a fidelity level that we wanted to take from not adequate to do training and readiness to something that's adequate to do training and readiness. We talk about the other platforms like E2D, P8A, F-35. All those are being built alongside the delivery of the platforms, and all those simulators are being built out of the box coming up with that fidelity level. But we have to take H60 and F18 up to a better level. That's the program that we execute today. And then the Airboss followed along in 2013 and 2014 to talk about distributed training. We went talking about connecting trainers together, put out a policy for FISC-A's, which is an aviation-centric fleet synthetic training exercise, and then also, what's our road going to be to get to LVC? So we're in the process of executing the NHA plan today, and that's what I'll focus on first. Okay, so we've seen something dramatic happen recently within simulation and aviation. Since NHA was published in 2011, we've really seen a difference in the training priorities. And it also applies to warfare as well. And this is certainly true in the strike platforms, but also in the maritime as well. Previously, for most of our warfare capabilities, it was very standalone. But now we're seeing warfare as more of systems, where a number of different platforms and systems have to come together to execute whatever your tactic is that you're going to execute. Before, we used to see really the primary training was really on the aircraft. A lot of areas, especially in some of the strike platforms, we can't even do that training in the aircraft anymore. It's not possible. We can't get the right players in the right airspace, and there are systems we can't even turn on to train before we go to war. You see the highest fidelity you can possibly get is live, and now we're seeing a lot of areas because you can't turn these systems on to get a much higher fidelity in kind of virtual environment. Before, we used to be able to outfit our ranges with threats. Today, the complexity and expense of the threats we need to put on our training ranges, especially talking about high double-digit SA, we can't afford it. We can't put them on our ranges. They're just too expensive to put there. However, one thing's still true is that you're never, ever, ever going to validate skills in a simulated environment. And let me give a good example of that is the Torpex. So the Torpex is a much broader type of exercise, right? You're not just testing the aircrew skills, you're testing the system skills. You're testing the ordnance ability to order up a torpedo and bring it to the airplane. You're testing maintenance control, their ability to have an aircraft dialed up on the ramp, ready to go, tested, ready to receive the torpedo, the loading process, the aircrew getting there with all the right stuff, getting in the right environment, dropping the torpedo, in the right environment, and then coming home. You'll never ever be able to test that inside a simulated environment. So we'll always, always, always have to validate on the aircraft. So again, when we're talking about the nascent program, we're not really talking about taking flight hours away from the aircrew and putting it in a virtual environment. What we're talking about really is improving the aircrew's performance before they ever get to the airplane. That's really the focus the Airboss wants us to have. And that's what we're trying to execute within PMA 205. So to deliver that, what do we have to do? So the first thing we have to do is we have to improve the fidelity of the simulators. I'll talk about different fidelity, and then I'll talk a little about what Kevin had to say about the complexity of nav air. There's a little bit of a dance between me and the training system like PMA 299 on what they provide. But we have to improve the fidelity of systems, especially across H60. That's the nascent program that we're executing.
We have a little bit of an emergency situation. We have a white van in front of the hotel right now, Virginia license plate 248664. We need it moved immediately. We have an emergency vehicle inbound to pick up a patient here that's having a problem. So if someone has a white van, Virginia license plate 248664, if you could please move it immediately. Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, second piece, we have to have realistic threat presentations. We have a couple different programs to do that with. We have semi-automated forces, SAFs that do that for us. We use NGTS, Next Generation Threat Simulator, and JSAF. JSAF's the one that drives the H60 backbone. We're trying to create what's called NATSI. I'll have a couple slides on that in a little bit, but it's a training hub. When you start connecting multiple simulators together, it gets more and more challenging to drive a realistic simulation. We're building NATSI. I'll update you where that is. And then common models are key. I'll talk about that in a minute too, which is to have a fair fight across distributed training systems. You need to be in the same environment with the same type of models, or else it doesn't look realistic. That's another one. Train like we fight, NCTE, the Navy Continuous Training Environment, provides a link so we can hook our simulators together. As we increase the complexity of our TTPs and the complexity of aircraft, it's becoming increasingly difficult for the instructors to grade the scenarios. We're trying to get automated tools like PMA to capture student performance, and then let the instructor focus on the higher end of the critique. And then finally, H60 community is very familiar with cybersecurity and the requirements as we talk about connected training. A lot of our simulators in March and April got kicked off at NCT, and I'll talk about where we're going with that and how we're going to try to overcome that limitation. Okay, fidelity versus concurrency. So within PMA 205, especially for the H60 program, we're talking about immersion fidelity and systems fidelity. So we take a look at the simulators, we look at the systems within the simulators, and do the systems represent the systems that are in the aircraft, and how accurate is that representation. So that's systems fidelity, does it act just like the aircraft. The other piece is the immersion fidelity. So as you're out there flying the simulator, do the visuals represent what the visuals should for the emulation? Does the aircraft control levers feel like the control, does our control loaders feel like the aero model that's actually in the airplane? Is the oral cueing giving me the proper oral cueing? So we call that immersion fidelity. And those two pieces are PMA 205 funded. The money comes in through us to the NHA program, and we execute that. But then there's another piece, which is the concurrency, which isn't within PMA 205. And that's the PMA 299 piece, where they make sure that the OFP that's in the aircraft is delivered and matches the same OFP that's in the simulator. So it's a little bit of a dance that I work with Captain Grubb to make sure that we're coordinated. We usually go in with a single contract and we do OFP upgrades the same time we do simulator upgrades, but two different sources of money, two different sets of requirements coming in, so it's a little bit challenging. But we start talking about fidelity, we start talking about concurrency. Those are the things you have to have before we can really talk about moving any type of TNR from an airplane into a simulator. And then next is how much fidelity you need. The H60 community is just about 100% maxed out as far as capacity within the training systems. We operate in the H60 about 18 hours a day. For example, the Hornet community runs their sims at about 10. So we're up at 18 hours a day at just about every one of the sites for H60. And the question is, when we start talking about adding simulators, and we are adding some simulators with the Turks contract, are we going to want in the future to add full flight simulators, which are exponentially more expensive than some of the other simulators? So we're looking now doing a study to follow on in NASEP in 2020 is, are there some skills that we could put in a lower level device that we could train without having to do the MILCON and everything else we need to do with a full fidelity simulator? Or is that something we want to keep building more full fidelity simulators? Because if we start talking about LBC, additional FIST events, we're just going to stress that capacity more and more and more. So fidelity is a big question we have, and fidelity is something we're looking at very closely now. So NASEP, what is it? It is a policy I talked about a little bit, but it established the policy for simulation as part of an overall strategy and a continuum. And again, the Air Boss put that out in 2006 and latest defined it in 2014. Our goal for NASEP is to provide the capability to generate skills and proficiency within simulation. We want to use common environments. We want to be able to link up to the NCTE. And again, the NASEP program is mostly focused on H60 and F-18. The other platforms are getting out of the box. So now we're looking at the follow-on to NASEP, which we're calling a fleet integrated training environment. So right now, there are other platforms out there, Sinatra, H53, some of the UASs that don't have follow-on dollars that are coming in NASEP. And we're building the new plan, the NASEP follow-on, which will allow us to bring those platforms in too. So 53s and Sinatra platforms can use the same pool of simulator money so they can keep doing their improvements so they're not left behind when the 5 principal platforms move forward. So this is what our plan looks like. The orange shows not connected training. As you move to the green, you can look at connected training, and then blue is connected training at a point higher than secret, where we've enabled cross-domain solutions, multi-level security rule sets. And the one key is, if you start looking across this, is that right in this area in 2016, you're going to notice that all the platforms start coming online. So at the end of 16, you'll have F-18s are connected this October. E2D was connected temporarily. Then they were disconnected, much like the H60s last December. They'll complete a contract and reconnect this December. Aegis is already connected to NCTE. H60's been connected probably the longest of any of our platforms and doing the most in connected training. And then P8A will connect up this December. So really 2016 calendar-wise is the big year that all of our platforms come online and start doing connected training with NCTE. And then we're bringing on what's called the NADC up top here, which is our hub, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So common models and SAFs, there's a bunch on here, but the only one I really want to touch on is CASE, which is our common ASW support environment. This is one of the keys for fidelity for us moving forward across the ASW platforms. And we just put out an RFP. Master Chief, when did you get the RFP out? A couple months ago now? And we're going to award a contract at our next, it's a fairly significant change. It's really a completely new system we're putting in for CASE. It's not just an enhancement, but it's a complete fidelity scrub and fidelity improvement that'll hit not only the ocean model itself to improve it, but also hit your ASW sensors, targets. One of the biggest programs we have this year going out is improvements to this ocean model. Should deliver in the 18-19 timeframe. And the rest of these are other models that we use across weapon systems, threat systems, visuals, and environmental models as well. But the one big for here is the CASE, which should award this contract here in the next couple months. So NCTE, this is what NCTE looks like from a simulation environment perspective today. And I put this up here because we need to talk about cybersecurity and where we want to go with NCTE. And this isn't the model we want to use. You know, right now, the drivers of NCTE are the surface community. NCTE is funded by N96. They provide all the resources for it. And aviation rides on it for free, essentially. And it drives the big driver for NWDC, Naval Warfare Development Command, who owns NCTE, really are the fleet synthetic exercises which involve these guys down here. Now, we've been leveraging NCTE for our distributed training, which also gets us the joint coalition. We're building out NCTE to the ranges right now as well. But where we really want to go is an aviation enclave within NCTE. I'll describe here in just a minute. Okay, NATSI. I touched on it a second ago, but the one thing we want to focus on with NATSI is, as we bring on more and more simulators, we start doing distributed training across different type model series. We're finding that we're overburdening the WTIs to come up with scenarios and try to run simulations from a single site. So this is very similar to what the Air Force has in Langley, which is called the Distributed Training Center. It's our naval aviation hub that we'll staff up and we'll put in people to generate scenarios, to drive a schedule, to execute the scenario, and then provide a top-level debrief to take the burden off the individual WTIs and they can focus on each one of their platform, each one of their people. The fleet NATSI is actually renovating some spaces over in the F-18 building in Oceana today. The renovation's almost complete. We invested in a prototype in Orlando that's been operational now for about 12 months. And that prototype will provide the design that we're going to install this fall. And the NATSI, the fleet NATSI, should be operational in January time of 2017, ready to do connected training exercises. Now, one of the keys is that NATSI is in Oceana, which is going to draw a lot of its SMEs from. So a lot of the SMEs that staff up the Air Force's DTC, and the same thing we'll do on our NATSI, are former aviators who've flown the missions, understand. They'll provide the white cell, they'll provide the red cell, they understand what we're doing. We're looking right now in San Diego and also in Jacksonville for more of a maritime-centric NATSI that we can have there to do more of the maritime mission. We're looking probably on the West Coast, so we have a NATSI on the East Coast and a NATSI on the West Coast. But again, we're looking, this one will probably be more strike-focused, and then the follow-on NATSI will be more maritime-focused. So that's what it looks like. That's a conceptual drawing, but this is the actual layout that we have in the simulator building over in Oceana today. Okay, cybersecurity. So in March and April, the H60 Sierra and Romeo accreditations expired. Simulators are considered, they're called what we refer to them as platform IT, and the process they use to get a connected accreditation is called a platform IT risk assessment. And those PRAs for H60 Romeo and Sierra expired in March and April. Previous to that time, NWDC would allow us to connect on a waiver, but the policy changed. NWDC went through a cyber inspection, a lot of vulnerabilities were assessed. They decided they could no longer take the risk of connecting systems with known cyber vulnerabilities to NCTE, and they didn't allow us to connect. So we put together some emergency PRA packages, we got them through, and at the beginning of May, we got the interim accreditation for 90 days to allow the Romeo and Sierras to reconnect. But we still have huge vulnerabilities in our simulators. Things like expired OSs, things like we don't have intrusion detection systems, we're not enforcing PKI, PKA. All these things drive what they call a high scan score. You scan your system, you get a score. H60 simulators are somewhere in the 80 to 100 in the score, and NWDC is looking for something around 5 to allow us to connect. But in our discussions with NWDC, they said that Fleet Cybercom will give you a valid PRA, either interim or a full PRA. You guys can go ahead and connect up. So we've got our simulators back online, but it takes us in NAVAIR about 10 months to put a package together and get it through the entire approval chain. So it's very, very likely, almost a certainty, that July 31st will come, our PRAs will expire, and we'll be right back to where we were in April. Admiral Grosslags at NAVAIR has been given the authority to sign delayed and disconnect letters, which so we'll use that process to try to keep the simulators online. But overall, we need a new strategy. We need something different. And the real risk vector for us in our simulators is that NCTE uses SIPRNet to connect the ships, and SIPRNet is seen as a huge threat vector for us for cybersecurity. So we're working right now with NWDC to create an aviation-only enclave which rides inside of NCTE, firewall from the rest of NCTE, and allow us to operate all of our FIST A exercises without connecting to the broader NCTE, which will provide us a huge mitigation for our cybersecurity vulnerabilities until the TERPS contracts fixes all those. So all those fixes are planned. It's just going to take us between 24 and 48 months to fix the H60 SIMs. But in the interim, if we can operate this aviation enclave here with NCT as the center, NATSI as the center point of it, also doing all your cybersecurity vulnerability scans on our enclave, it's a huge mitigation that we think when we go back to Fleet Cybercom, they'll give us a full PRA for 3 years rather than this 90 days, 90 days, 90 days where we never know if we're going to be disconnected. There are some other advantages to this as some of these systems start going to higher than secret training. Having an enclave that's firewalled out will prevent a lot of other areas and allow us to connect directly to the Air Force network that we can't do today. Now, it is not going to prevent us from doing FIST GC and FIST J support. What will happen is if your system is tasked to support a FIST GC or FIST J, or for whatever reason you want to connect directly to a ship to work, ship to a helicopter, you can do that still. You'll just come outside the enclave temporarily. We'll hook you up through a connection process. You can do whatever training you need to do, then we'll bring you back inside the enclave. So essentially you'll sit here the entire time and we'll have much fewer restrictions than if you were sitting out here in broader NCTE. So we're working on this. We're having meetings for the next month or so with NWDC to understand exactly how we're going to physically implement this and get their approval to go ahead and have our own enclave. Okay, moving away from training to a couple other technologies. VR. If you have a 15-year-old son who's a gamer, probably talking about VR and where we're going with VR. Oculus Rift, Sony, a lot of different companies. If you get out to any of the training technical meetings like ITSEC, VR is all over the place, and we're looking at it as well. We're making some investments right now in some just prototype systems to try to understand, is VR an actual training and proficiency capability, or is it a game? And it's being driven, it's being driven mostly by industry, which is why I have the PS4 up there. But again, VR for us we see as a potential for just two areas, which is really just deployed type of training. So if you need a small footprint device for deployed and maybe mission rehearsal. VR is not new to us. Those of you who are in San Diego and have seen it, we've got VR already working in the AVET trainer. We also, if you've been through flight school and had parachute training, we've done the VR parachute descent trainer. But we're looking to see, if there are other areas we can expand VR into. Technology's accelerated to the point where a lot of the latency challenges we had before that would drive sim sickness are getting much, much better in technology. That's a potential area we can go. Our plan in PMA 205 is just to experiment with it. We're going to get a couple of demo systems. We're going to give it to the PhD and the science and learning folks down in Orlando and find out if there's really any training. Can we get training out of this thing, or is it just going to be a fun game? So that's kind of where we are with VR today. And then finally moving to LVC, and this will be the last few slides for me. One of the questions we get asked all the time is, what is LVC? So whenever I talk about it, I like to at least provide at least a definition, which is, LVC is defined as a subset of live training where you have either virtual or virtual constructive injects, right, to augment the system and provide more complexity than you could generate in a live environment. From an architecture perspective, profession. From an architecture perspective, we really have this today, virtual environment, constructive environments, Nancy we're bringing on. She's riding the NCTE as its line. We're building NCTE up to TINA, which is our training range network, and linking it up. And then the next question is, where do we go from here? There are a bunch of different ways. We have different systems now that can take voice comms from the simulator and drive it all the way out to the radio. We're using it on FIST, J, and GC exercises today. It's called the Dream Suite. It's a radio suite. That's what connects your ship's pier side. We're thinking about putting on our aviation training ranges as well. Same thing with data links that translate the virtual data link into a real data link and broadcast it over the training range like out in Fallon or in Key West. And then the real key is, this is the piece where the development work has to be done in the future, which is, what's the data link that links up the aircraft actually to the virtual world? For the TACAIR community, potentially TCTS Increment 2 is a encrypted data link we're working on. We could drive constructive entities to be put in the cockpit. But I don't think that system has the bandwidth that you would need. If you wanted to push a virtual submarine from here up through a data link with all the different frequencies and have virtual sonobuoys come out, we need to look at a different data link maybe for the maritime community, because TCTS Increment 2 won't have the bandwidth to do that today. So still, we're a ways away from going anywhere with LVC today. But from an architecture perspective, this is kind of where both the Navy and the Air Force are in architecture. Okay, so challenges and risks, and this will be my last slide. Funding shortfalls. So NASIP is very well funded. To execute NASIP and elevate the fidelity of the H-60 sims, that's funded, it's well funded, and it's been fenced off by OpNet N98. They have touched that account very, very little over the last 5 or 6 years. And they seem like they're going to leave all the funding in place to finish up what we need to do with the simulator fidelity. What is not funded is whatever that future LVC pipe is going to be. That is not funded today. Trainer networks, again, we experienced getting kicked off NCT already. We have a strategy, but again, that's a risk that we work. And then our cybersecurity is migrating from the PRAs that we use today to what's called the risk management framework. We're trying to figure out what that is, and what the effect is, and how we're going to do cybersecurity in the future. Configuration management across all the different OEMs is to try to connect different simulators together, time model series from different vendors. It's often a challenge to bring them together. And then, how do we do both FRS training, procedural, and also fleet training, where we're looking more at tactics. And then the last one there. So, it's my last slide. I'll be happy to take any questions from anyone. Okay, thank you very much.